So it's just about that time of the year, isn't it? The calendar is about to switch from one year to the next, and everybody is thinking about what their New Year's resolutions will be. Right? Yeah, me neither. See, here's the thing. I'm not the biggest fan of the New Year's resolution as a concept. It's not because I think it's dumb to try to better yourself or to lose the weight or to read all those books or anything else that might be on your list of resolutions or on anybody else's for that particular matter. It's not because I don't think it's important to strive to improve yourself, to make yourself become a better person. It's nothing like that. The reason that I personally don't like New Year's resolutions as a concept is because far too often it doesn't lead us to any actual change. Think about it for a minute. If you're like me, your chances are pretty good that out of the thousands of New Year's resolutions that you have made in your lifetime, you have maybe stuck to 3. Right? Meaning that all these other resolutions that you have made throughout time, you've just kind of abandoned by the wayside, and usually before we get out of January. Right? Just me? Okay, cool. That makes me feel really good about myself. Anyway, but maybe you decided that, starting January 1st, you were going to lose that weight finally, right? That's the most common New Year's resolution that people make is I'm going to lose weight. I have made that resolution. I am now going to be, this is ugly. I'm going to be 40 this year. I've probably made that resolution 38 times, right? That I'm going to lose the weight. But let's say that you've decided that January 1, you're gonna lose that weight, and you're going to do so by eating a salad every day for lunch. You're going to join a gym and go at least 3 times a week, and you're going to do everything you can to cut back on fast food, sweets, snacks, and all the other this and thattery that life has to offer. So you go to the store, and you buy all of the healthy stuff in order to make those salads, and you buy even more than you think you need, so that way there's no space in your refrigerator for any of the snacks and the sweets and all that other stuff. You're thinking, I'm going to trick myself by not having the room for those cupcakes. There's always room for cupcakes, trust me. But you've decided that I'm going to commit to this. This is going to be my lunch, a salad every week, every day. That's what I'm going to do. And then you go off and you go to the gym and you decide to get a membership at that gym, but you don't want to just pay for a month. You want to go ahead and pay for the full year because you think maybe that way I'm going to motivate myself. I've paid for the full year. If you're like me, I want to get my money's worth out of whatever it is that I'm putting my money on. And so I'm going to make sure that I'm at that gym 3 times a week minimum. And I'm going to go and I'm going to do all that stuff to work out. And you get started on it. And that first couple of weeks, man, you're kind of killing it, right? You're eating those salads every single day. You're hitting that gym. You're doing light workouts because you don't want to just dive in and try to bench press 315 pounds. That's a terrible way to get started. You're going to start and gradually get your way up to that point. And you're jogging on the treadmill. You're doing all the things that you should do. And it's starting to show on the scale that, hey, I've lost a couple of pounds already. And we haven't even turned the calendar to February yet. But then things kind of change. Because about 3 weeks in, you get a thought that comes into the back of your mind and it refuses to go away. And it's a thought that just sticks with you every day at about noon. Salads are boring. And that thought keeps hammering its way at you. And you start to think, you know what? For 3 weeks now, I have been great. I have eaten those salads every single day for lunches. Today, I think I've earned a treat. I'm going to go get a burger. And so you do it. You head to the drive-thru, you go and you get that burger because you thought, I'm going to be right back on the wagon tomorrow. It's going to be fine. And then you bite into that burger and you're hit with the realization. And that realization is that the worst fast food burger is still way better than the best salad that you've ever eaten. And suddenly the next day you're getting ready to get that salad out again and you're just like, ugh, that burger yesterday was really good. And that salad is suddenly the most unappealing thing that could ever happen. And you find yourself back into the habit of going and getting those fast food every day. But that's all right. You're sticking with the gym, right? You're doing it 3 times a week. You're able to go for it. It's fantastic. But then somewhere around March, maybe early April, something happens to disrupt that routine. You've kind of gotten into this point where you're doing it every day at a certain time, then something happens. Maybe you don't feel so good that morning. Maybe your kid is homesick from school. Maybe a meeting runs long at work. Any number of different things that could happen that disrupt it, and all of a sudden you think, I completely forgot to go to the gym today. So you think, I'm going to redouble my efforts, and I'm going to do twice as much the next time I go in. But then something else happens, and next thing you know, you've missed out on a few. And about a month later, you have that realization, I haven't been to the gym in weeks. And all of a sudden, the idea of trying to get yourself up and go to the gym, you look at your calendar, you look at the schedule that's going on, and you just, I don't have the time to go. And all of a sudden, that habit is completely abandoned and dropped. You had all the best intentions of doing this, but by the time the calendar rolls back around to December 31st, you're looking back on your resolutions, and you saw that resolution that said, I'm going to lose 30 pounds, and somehow you gained 5. But that's okay. I'm going to do better next year. Right? Here's the thing. Oftentimes when it comes to these resolutions, the problem that we have is that we lose motivation. We lose motivation in being able to do these things. These resolutions are not bad by any stretch of the imagination. Again, making changes in your life to try to improve yourself, I'm always going to be a fan of. I'm always going to think that that is a good thing for us to do. It's good to look at trying to read more, to lose weight, to make that career change, all those different things. And even most of the time, these resolutions are made out of a recognition that we need to make changes in our lives. We just struggle to motivate ourselves throughout the entire year to make those changes. Oftentimes, if our motivation is not there, the changes that we are trying to make are not going to last. Right? My in-laws smoked for most of their adult lives, and probably a little bit in high school, if I had to be honest with you. They knew from the time that they really got started smoking, they needed to quit smoking. Right? Especially when my wife and her sister and their brother were young, they knew they needed to quit for no other sake than for their kids. We're going to quit. It's going to be fine. But they just got sneakier. They'd go out into the garage and smoke out there. They'd get away from the kids so the kids wouldn't see it and smoke there. It wasn't until about 7-8 years ago when my father-in-law suffered a near-fatal heart attack and was told by a doctor, if you don't quit smoking, you're going to be in a box, that he was finally able to quit smoking. Sometimes we need the right motivation in order to keep going, and when you're trying to motivate yourself to make a drastic change in your life, that's a difficult thing to do. And the reason why it's difficult is because human beings are creatures of routine, and we are creatures also of comfort, right? We tend to fall into patterns in our lives, and we stay in those patterns because we grow comfortable with them. You have a specific routine that you do probably every day. You certainly have a routine that you do every week. It has become part of who you are, and to disrupt that routine would feel uncomfortable for you. And so we will always stick to those sort of things. So when you want to try to lose that weight and you think you got to do these big drastic changes, that's going to disrupt your routine. And you're never going to fall back into what's comfortable for you. If you decide that you need to go clean your house, but you're sitting on the couch, you want to stay on the couch, but you know you need to go fold the laundry, chances are you're not getting off that couch. You know you should eat something healthy, you should eat more vegetables, but you really want pizza. I mean, at least pizza, you can add more vegetables to it, right? We will always stick to what is comfortable, what is routine for us, until we are properly motivated to do something else. And I think it is a question of motivation that really is highlighted in our text today. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 25, starting in verse 14. So if you want to get there in your Bibles or on your apps, Matthew chapter 25, that's where we're going to be today. We're not there quite there yet, Stu, but that's okay. You can leave it up there. We'll get there. But here's the thing. This is a particular parable of Jesus, and we've talked about what parables are in the past. Parables are Jesus' way of using story to try to teach us more about the kingdom of God. He takes something that people know or could understand to instruct them about things that they have not seen yet and probably won't see until the other side of this life. So Jesus uses parables oftentimes to try to help us better understand. These stories and these images would give us a frame of reference to help us understand things that we don't understand yet. And in this particular parable, Jesus sets up the entire narrative in verse 14 by saying that the kingdom is just like a man about to go on a journey, who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. Now, we're not told a lot about this particular guy. We're really only told that he's about to go on a journey and that he is entrusting some property to his servants, to the people who work for him. But we learn very quickly that this guy is very wealthy. He is quite well-to-do, and he's about to go on this journey. This journey could be for work. It could be a vacation. We don't really know. It doesn't really tell us. He doesn't give us the itinerary of what this guy's trip is all about. But he just tells us that he's going on a trip. And like a lot of people who have money, just because he's not going to be around doesn't mean that he wants to stop earning money, right? He wants to put his money to work for him. And so he entrusts 3 of his servants to go and to build more wealth for him while he is away on this particular trip. But we're kind of taught already that he doesn't quite trust all of them equally. And we see that in the disbursement of what is given. We find out in verse 15, it says, to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, depending on each one's ability. And then he went on his journey. Before we get too much deeper, we have to ask the obvious question, don't you think? What's a talent? Right? We use the term talent to think about what somebody's abilities are, what they can do, what you can do that's better than everybody else can do. You know, that's what we think about when we think of talent. If we see somebody who can paint a beautiful picture or who's really good at putting a ball into a hoop, we say that person has talent, right? But clearly, as we're talking about in this text, through the context clues, we can see that a talent is a sum of money, right? So what is a talent? What are we talking about? Because it could be $5, it could be a penny, who knows? We've talked about before about the concept of denarius. The denarius was a unit of payment for a day laborer. If you worked for an entire day for someone, if you were just picked up that morning and brought to go help them harvest their field or pick their grapes or whatever, at the end of that day, when the workday was over, you expected to receive 1 denarius. That was your pay. In my research and trying to find out how much exactly is a talent, several scholars believe that 1 talent is about the same equal sum to about 20 years worth of denarii. Denariuses? Whatever the plural happens to be. Nobody told me. So we're not exactly talking like your put away egg money here, right? We're talking about millions and millions of dollars. And that's just for 1 particular talent. And here this master has dispersed 8 talents. He just handed his servants an astronomical sum of money, and then he went away. That's a lot of trust, don't you think? I don't trust people with my millions of dollars like that, but first you have to have the millions of dollars in order to trust somebody with it. But anyway, this is the sort of thing, he does all of this. He doesn't give them equal amounts, but rather, as the text said, he does so according to each one's ability. And as it turns out, he was probably on to something with his estimations of these particular servants. Because right away, and in fact, Matthew uses the term immediately, the guy who was given 5 talents gets straight to work. He starts making smart investments. He starts building his equity. He starts picking all the right stocks, all the stuff that us grown-ups know everything about, right? Does anybody know anything about that stuff? Because the best I got is it's just guessing. Anyway, but he does all this stuff. He puts all this money to work, and before too long, he is actually able to double the amount of that money. And again, if we are talking about millions and millions of dollars just in a single talent, the idea that he could take 5 of that and turn it into 10 tells us a lot about this guy's ambition, his ability, and the way that he is able to move, because he is really good at making money. And then we find out that the second guy, the one who was given 2 talents, well, he's just about as good as this dude, because he takes those 2 talents, again, millions of dollars here, and he doubles it as well. These guys are really good at finding ways of building their master's wealth and acquiring more stuff and making sure that whenever he comes back, he's got a nest egg and then some. And then there's the last guy. And he does something different. He makes a choice, and we find that choice in verse 18. It says, "But the man who had received 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money." I don't know how you feel about this, but to me, this kind of feels like that kooky relative that you got who hides all their money in a mattress. Right? The other guys have taken the money that they were trusted with and they have grown it to create an even larger fortune. But this guy, he is perfectly comfortable with keeping it exactly the way it is, without making any changes whatsoever. And sure enough, over the course of time, where again, we're not told how long he was gone, but the master does in fact return. And before he's even had a chance to unpack his suitcase, he wants to find out about his money. Because if you're trusting people with that much money, you want to make sure that they gave you your money back. Matthew says in verse 19, "After a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them." I mean, again, I know if I've trusted people with my millions of dollars, I'm going to want to know what they did with it. So it makes sense to me that this guy, before he's ever even had a chance to go catch his breath, wants to find out, where's my money at? What's going on? But imagine how delighted that master had to be when the very first guy that he brought in, the guy who he entrusted the most with, who said, "I'm going to give you 5 talents. I'm going to give you millions upon millions of dollars, and I'm going to trust you to do something with this." And that guy comes back and said, "Not only did I grow your wealth, I doubled what you gave me." That guy's getting a nice Christmas bonus, don't you think? Right? How delighted would you be to know that the trust that I gave this person, not only did he prove to be worthy of that trust, he proved to be worthy to be trusted with even more. Because now I'm kicking myself for not giving him 10 in the first place. And so he brings in the second guy. He gets the other guy in there, and he finds out that even though I didn't think he was quite as good as the first guy, he's probably better than I thought he was, because he was able to take that too, and he doubled it as well. I gave these guys 7 talents, and they doubled it to 14 for me. That's a lot of cheddar. Don't you think? And so it doesn't surprise us when he says the same thing in verses 21 and 23. It says his master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master." I love that. Enter into the joy of your master. The master is so delighted in what these two have been able to do. He is so overwhelmed by the amount that they were able to take this stuff and double it, that he wants them to come and share in the joy that he has within him. He's inviting them to come even deeper into this. And you got to think that the next time this master's going on vacation, these guys are going to get even more to mess with, to go and build and to do double. They're going to get those bonuses. They're going to get everything that they want because they have just proven themselves to be completely worthy of his trust. They have taken what he has given them, and they've been able to use it and to use it effectively. But that's not how things go for the third guy. Again, this is the guy who decided to bury it, to put it away and pretend that it's not there until his master returns. And as much as I love to expand upon these things as we talk about narratives, and as much as I like to dive into how much what that emotion might feel like, how things might have gone, the way that he may have felt in that particular moment, I don't think that I could convey it any better than what Matthew does in verses 24 through 30. So let's read it through together. It says, "The man who had received 1 talent also approached, saying, 'Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid and went off and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours.' His master replied to him, You evil, lazy servant. If you knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I haven't scattered, then you should have deposited my money with the bankers, and I would have received my money back with interest when I returned. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10. For to everyone who has more will be given, and he will have more than enough. But for the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. And throw this good-for-nothing servant into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I can't help but notice, and maybe you picked up on it too, but this guy has seen what his fellow servants have done. He's been able to see everything that they've done, right? I imagine these guys worked in close proximity with each other. They're working for the same man in the same household. And so all this time that the master has been gone, he has been able to see exactly what these two have been doing. And he recognizes far too late that his master is probably not going to be real thrilled with what he has done with the money that he was entrusted with. Because he hasn't done what he knew was expected of him. So what does he do? He comes up with excuses. He starts spouting off reasons as to why he didn't do the thing that he was meant to do. The thing that he was entrusted to do, the thing that he was told by his master to make sure that he does. He starts off by telling him, I know you don't gather where you sow. I know you've not done all this sort of, you're a harsh man. You're this person who does all this ruthlessness. And so I just hid it instead because I was afraid of you. What a terrible excuse. And the master himself cuts directly past all of the excuses that this guy is trying to make, because he knew that that wasn't what was expected of him. He knew what the expectation was to grow what he had been given. The master even said he would have accepted a slower growth as long as it was growth. It didn't need to be double. That wasn't the expectation. It just needed to grow. But instead, he kept things exactly the same. This servant was comfortable leaving things the way that they were. And because of that, he was called evil and lazy, because he did not do what was expected of him. He knew what he needed to do, but he was not properly motivated to do what was supposed to happen. The thing of it is I see this in the church. See, I'm willing to bet that if I said right here and right now that it is the job, the expectation of Christ himself, that every Christian should go and share the gospel with the people that they encounter every single day, I'm willing to bet that the vast majority, if not all of you, would probably agree with that particular statement. That we all know, we all understand that it is our responsibility as Christians. It's not just the preacher's responsibility. It's not just the youth minister's responsibility. It's not just the elder's responsibility to go and spread the gospel, that Jesus himself repeatedly told all of his followers to go and to spread his gospel. At no point do we ever see Jesus sitting around the 12 and saying, hey, Pete, I want you to go and spread the gospel. The rest of you just go and fill a pew for me. We all know and we all understand that the expectation of Christ is that every Christian share the gospel so that others might be saved. So why aren't we? It's an uncomfortable question, isn't it? Here's the thing, we could stand here all together and I could get a big old sheet of paper and we could come up with every excuse in the world as to why we're not. Well, the culture right now is shifting against us, so they don't want to hear it anyway. Oh, well, people are just so set in their ways. Oh, people want foolproof evidence that God exists. People are mean, people are cruel. We could try to say all that if we wanted to, but what are those? They're excuses. We know what the expectation is, but we are, I hate this word, purposefully not doing that. Why? Because it would disrupt our comfort. It's easy to keep things the way that they are, right? It's easy to have this built-in routine and keep things exactly the way that we are. See, I don't think the problem is that we as Christians are uncomfortable with sharing what we believe in, because there are some of you who share things on your social media that you believe in, and you go so far as to say, if you don't believe this, unfriend me. Unfollow me. Right? We're willing to be bold when it comes to our political beliefs, but we're less willing to be bold when it comes to our faith. Because it disrupts our comfort. You know how I know we're creatures of comfort who like routine? Because I can tell who's not here based on where they're not sitting. You all pick the same seats every week, as if the Holy Spirit of God can only be 3 rows back and 5 seats over. And if we go and we share our faith with other people, then what do I do if next Sunday, somebody is sitting in my spot? That's disrupted my comfort. But keeping things exactly the way they are, that's nice and easy. I like that one. Here's the problem. That's not the expectation of the master. See, the expectation of our master is that we go and we boldly proclaim his name to all corners, to share it with every living, breathing human being that we possibly can, in the hopes that maybe some of them will be saved. The expectation is not all are saved. The expectation is not that we double the size of this church next week. It'd be cool if it happened, but that's not the expectation. The expectation is that we go and we share the gospel, that we do whatever we can to do so. And it's not hard to come up with good motivations as to why we should do those sorts of things. It's not difficult for us to think of the reasons why we ought to be sharing our faith. Because it could prevent somebody from an eternity spent away from God. I'd call that pretty good motivation. Because by sharing our faith, it will remind us of just how far we have come with Christ, and it'll long us to draw deeper in our worship of him. I'd say that's a pretty good one too. But here's the problem. Oftentimes when we do share our faith, oftentimes our motivation is, well, Jesus told me I have to. It's the same motivation we used to give why we were wearing that ugly sweater in our picture, because my mom told me I had to. I don't know about you, but man, I hope that when my time comes, whether that's tomorrow or whether that's 50 years from now, I hope that when Jesus looks at me, I get to hear him say, well done. Well done. I firmly believe, and I believe this wholeheartedly, that it is not a mistake that you are placed exactly where you are. It's not a mistake that you work where you currently work. It's not a mistake that you are surrounded by the neighbors you are currently surrounded by. See, I believe that God has kind of placed you exactly where you are. And he has done so for you to be able to make an impact on those coworkers, on those fellow students, on those neighbors, on those whoever. You are positioned to be light in those people's lives, to go and to share the good news of Jesus Christ with them. I can't guarantee that they're going to accept it. If I could guarantee that, that'd be a whole other kettle of fish. I can't guarantee that, but I do know that your responsibility, the expectation of your master, is to at least try. Is it going to be uncomfortable? Yes. Is it going to lead to changes? Probably. But here's the thing. If you think about some of the changes in your life, not all of those changes, in fact, I would argue most of those changes have not been bad. Why do we make changes? To improve. Change is not always a bad thing. It is a scary thing sometimes, but it is not always a bad thing. Let me make this more personal for you. At the start of this year, we laid out that the mission of this church is now summed up in 3 words. What are those 3 words? We love Lexington. It's right there on the sign outside. So the fact that some of you didn't just jump right on that makes me really nervous. We are a church that has set as our whole mission statement is we love Lexington. If you think back to that first Sunday in January, I told you I don't want that to just be a cute catchphrase, but what could possibly be more loving to our community around us than to share the good news of Jesus Christ with them? We know what we need to do. Let's make it more personal. You know what you need to do. Let's get uncomfortable. Let's go do it. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age.